I think we're live. Hello, hello. I feel very claustrophobic, so I'm going to adjust some things. I couldn't find my glasses anywhere, so I was running around like a chicken trying to find my glasses, which means everything else is out of whack. So I'm just gonna babble at myself until anybody pops on. Nobody probably knows whether we're having it or we're not. I was really sick last week. Uh, Yesterday was the first day that I started to feel like a human being, and today I feel much better. But just that kind of feeling wonky from when you're sick for like a solid week and you just kind of feel like a spaghetti noodle. That's kind of where I'm. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm in the spaghetti noodle phase. I heard Patrick was on, thankfully, last week. I had done my class and had to go because I teach in the mornings on Saturday, and I felt so bad for people. I had to go to the bathroom like 3 or 4 times. They were very gracious. I didn't even think to I didn't even think to come on and say I'm not coming on because I was just like done. But so yeah, I appreciate that. I guess you guys are having a bit of a chit chat without me, which is good. I feel very, very dark. And I feel like I'm in a corner, so we're going to try to adjust some things here because we're all on. Oh, here you can see my messy corner. There we go. Those bags and a coat and a stick that keeps you safe if you're living alone in an apartment. That's probably why I had it shifted this way. Oh well. You guys can all accept the fact that sometimes we have messy corners. It happens sometimes. You come in, you throw something down, and then you have a messy corner. Oh, Mr. Chris got me this in my class. It's up here. I had made a mention. I was picking, when I'm teaching a class and the slide presentation is up, mostly you see the slide presentation and there's a little corner where I'm at. And I was holding up a deck and I was like, oh, maybe I need like a big giant deck. And so Chris, one of my students that was taking the class, sent me this, came in the mail like a couple days later in my post office box, came this giant Rider-Waite Smith. For comparison, here's my like Centennial, which is already a pretty good size deck. But it's a huge deck so that I can hold it up. It's not, I'm sorry, Simon, but it's not staying on my historical deck collection. But I thought it was hilarious. So we'll put it down here. Okay. What else? I'm just clearing space. I'm feeling very claustrophobic. I'm a claustrophobic person anyways. And then if you add like not feeling well or getting, just kind of recovering, it just, don't switch. Okay. What's going on? Don't switch. I don't know what's happening. I'm closing some things down. Hello, Susanna. Thank you. I know I'm trying. We'll see how well this goes. I'm not, our topic was astrology, and all the way up until just like a couple minutes ago when I was pulling out some books, I was like, cool, let's talk about astrology because who doesn't want to talk about astrology? And I think we talked about astrology, but I don't know what to say. I don't know. This is what you get. You get Recovering Kelly. And if you want to hang out with Recovering Brain Kelly, great. If you don't, I understand, and you may want to step away from the camera because, that's what you're getting. That's what you're getting today. How is everybody else? While I'm kind of clearing some space for myself and figuring out why I'm so dark, I'm putting away some stuff off of my immediate space so that I don't quite feel so claustrophobic. Full moon tomorrow. I get full moon squirreliness. And see how that's coming in and out? I think I know what the problem is. Let me try to fix it. I have to remember that I have to open up this webcam software before I come online, but I'm very often, running around like a squirrel. And so that doesn't always happen, clearly, because we talk about this all the time, and I'm sure it's very annoying. I'm going to try to open it up and see if it will let me adjust it while we sit here. Okay, I'm scrolling back here. I'm just going to give a big hello to everyone versus I'm not going to try to scroll too much because it makes me feel kind of nauseous. But yes, as Nikki says, who's going to be my brain today. Miss Nikki, you're in charge of my brain because I don't have much of a brain. All right, now I'm going to close this. Miss Nikki's in charge of my brain today. Okay. Let me just see if I'm able to adjust this. Oh, there we go. Is that better? Somebody can let me know if that was better. I need to take autofocus off because that I don't like. I got to figure out where to do that. Autofocus. Bam. Turn that off. I know Miss Nikki's like, oh no, don't do that to me. Let's see, we might even be able to zoom in a little bit so you don't have to see my mess. Whoa, hello. Now you can see my mess up closer. We're just accepting that we're all human beings today. And that we sometimes have, that's going to drive me nuts seeing that messy corner. But we're just going to accept that we're all human beings that have messy corners now and then. Let's just talk about astrology again. I'm all for it. If you're all for it, I'm all for talking about it. I believe we talked about it very early on when we started doing topics. And I totally forgot about it, that we even talked about it. But let's talk about what we think about astrology. Do you believe in astrology? Do you use astrology? What do you feel about astrology? Do you think it's a bunch of woo-woo kind of thing? Do you think it has anything to do with anything at all? What do you feel about astrology? I definitely work with and use astrology all the time. I do find it to be fascinating when I've looked at birth charts for all of my family members. Not all, I would say, because I have a big family, but a lot of, especially the people that I interact with a lot in my family. And there are really powerful, I can see powerful likenesses to people in their birth charts. Now, the one thing I always do try to remind people of when, when I'm talking to them about it, is that it's just a snapshot of your potential. For me, it represents a snapshot of your birth chart, represents a snapshot of the energy at birth. It's not a line in the sand that says this is who you are, this is who you will always be, and just accept that this is the way it is. Oh, you've got a Scorpio sun, moon, and rising sign, you might as well dig a hole in the sand or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like the whole nature, for me, it's all it's similar to the nature versus nurture argument, right? So our personalities, formed by nature, just inherently who we are, no matter how we're raised, or are who we are, come impacted by nurture, by the people who raise us and the society that we're surrounded by. And of course, it seems common sense to me. I believe it's a combination of both, right? I do believe there's far more than we inherit about our personality than we realize. I've definitely seen this in we have a big family, and there are personality types that are so similar to each other that have had very little interaction with each other. And so we know that there is far more that comes into play through our genetics, I think, than we might realize. But then we also have who's around us and how are we raised and who are our, what are those people that are immediate family and the way that they raise us, what kind of school, what kind of church should we go to, what kind of social structure, how does media, all of that starts to shift and change our personality experiences that we have. So while a birth chart can give us that overall energy and where things are headed, we sometimes our strengths have been pressed down by people around us over time of being raised in a certain way. Those things that might be strengths are we don't even realize we have them because they've just been tamped down. Sometimes our weaknesses that our birth chart might show have been we've done all this hard work to compensate for compensate for these different things. So I think that for me, birth charts are a really fantastic map. They're a really fantastic overview of what our potentials are and the potential energy that's at our disposal. But I don't think that it is a set in the stone kind of thing that you can never escape the way in which whatever you look like in your birth chart, you can never escape that energy. So that's kind of where I land with it. I have no question that to me, so part of my worldview is that I don't really have any questioning about the fact that the planets around us, the moon, the sun, the planets, have an impact on Earth and thus have an impact on ourselves, our physical selves. I think that for me, that is just part of my worldview, and I walk through the world with the assumption and with the understanding that the cycles of the moon, the cycles of the sun, the changes of seasons, the cycle of the moons that move the tides and have an impact on female bodily cycles, that these things do have an impact on who we are. And so in that way, I do think it's very useful to have a look at them and pay attention to them. Okay, I'm going to scroll back a little bit. I know that was a lot of rambling. Oh, Miss Kaleidoscope made it, and Claire is late. It's okay, not too late. Adam, I like what Adam says. He says, I think it's a poetic way to examine the human experience. I love that. I think that's absolutely beautiful. Most people are saying that they do think there's something to it. Some people feel very challenged by it. And so tend to be like, I don't even want to look at it. Like Miss Kaleidoscope says, her brain hurts when she tries to work with it, so she just doesn't worry about it. That's a perfectly reasonable thing. Claire says there are investors who will use astrology as an investment tool, and since it is a factor, she doesn't ignore it. I understand that. As a 417 says, astrology, numerology, alchemy, sacred geometry, all replaced by gangster science now. I don't know what the term gangster science is, so I will see if maybe he or she, I'm sorry, they will describe what that means. People dabbled, going to deep dive. Shadow's Truth believe it's both inherited and how we're raised. I agree. I really do think it's a combination of those things. Tammy Pie, hi, triple high five, is going to look into geomancy. Western geomancy definitely has ties in with astrology as well. I'm the 8th child born of 14, so astrologically we have all signs there. That's neat, Holly. I just got thrown forward. Yes, we are. Yes, Miss Nikki, we are talking about astrology for another little while. I know we talked about it before. I totally did not remember that until just before I came on, and I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, whatever. It's a big topic. We can talk about it again. Why not? I just got knocked where I was reading people's thing. Adam says tarot and astrology serve the same purpose for me. That's interesting. For me, it does not. that's something that's an interesting thing to think about, Adam, in terms of what role does astrology versus tarot play. That's I quite like that. We might want to come back to that as and look into that a little deeper. I'm going to finish scrolling through here. Mr. Patrick is very excited about this topic, of course. He has to go to his son's birthday. Happy birthday to Jeffrey. Okay. I'm scrolling through here. Matthew says, personally with astrology, I feel like there are some character types that are easier to verify. That makes sense. Miss Kaleidoscope is listening but crocheting at the same time. So it's not too Charlie, but not ignore. She's like saying, I don't want to talk about astrology, but she'll make it because she's a sweetheart. Hello, Tara student. How long can I turn this up at work for people start to wonder? I don't know. So Richard says he's an Aries with an Aries moon, right? So he's got that strong Aries. I think that's a big thing. And we did talk about this last time, but I think I did, and I have a book that I do, and I guess that's why I thought, let's talk about this. And I actually just picked up a copy of it. I got the Kindle version. I think it was just sample part. I know I've read the first couple of chapters of this, and Patrick, I know who has to go. He recommended this to me. He said, please get this so that we can talk about it. And I think this might be really good for people who are, don't want to dive super, super deep, but may want to get kind of into more than just what is your sun sign. And it's called You Were Born for This, Astrology for Radical Self-Acceptance by, I don't know if that's Cheney or Shawnee or Shaney. I'm not sure. Shaney Nicholas. Here, I'll type it out. Please, poor person who's like, you just slaughtered my name. Not that she will ever be watching this video, but if she did, I think she would be horrible. What I like about this, and again, I haven't read this whole thing yet, so we'll have to return to this after I have. But what I like about this is that the focus of this isn't to go through your whole birth chart, which can be pretty overwhelming, right? Although, you can work your way through it. And I think eventually the goal would be to kind of work your way through your birth chart. But what this book focuses on is your sun, your moon, and your rising sign or your ascendant. And the way that though you need all three of those to get a pretty good idea about your inherent energy and your inherent personality traits, not just your sun sign, right? That's just not enough to give you a really good idea of a person just like, oh, this person is a Gemini, so they are automatic this, and this. Or, oh my gosh, this person is a Scorpio, and so they're this, and this. Right? Oops, I probably should turn my phone off. So this focuses on those three things. And she focuses on your sun sign as your life's purpose, your moon sign as your physical and emotional needs, and your ascendant and its ruler as your motivation for life and the steer person of your ship. But one of the things that I really liked about this is it kind of clearly breaks things down. Now, I do have looked at birth charts for a long time. I am not an astrologist. Let us be very clear about this. I am not an astrologist. I would never in a million years claim to be one, because I do think to be an astrologist is a lot of study. And I think that to use the term astrologist, you need to be somebody who is quite learned of astrology. But I do understand the basis of astrology. I do work with birth charts and look at birth charts. So I'm like one of those, like, I have a solid understanding of the base of astrology, but I am not an astrologist. So just to be clear about that. But I do feel like this gives you a really good, but I wanted to read this piece. Let me see if I can find it. I'm not really prepared, because I've been sick for a week. I'm just going to blame it on that, but I'm scattered anyways. Okay, let me find it. I just really liked this one thing that she wrote about your birth chart. Um, Maybe I'm not gonna be able to find it. My point, okay, I'm not gonna. Maybe I'll find it in a little bit. But what I like is that she also, and this is not a review of this book because I haven't finished reading it, but I will come back and do a review of this book because I actually think this might be great for people who want to sink into astrology, but they don't want to do their whole birth chart all at one time. But she talks about how she before you dive into astrology, she says make these commitments, and her commitments are to never give my current understanding of my chart too much power, right? Just because your chart says that you're, I don't know, you're really a deceptive person, right? So maybe your birth chart has something in it that leads to you might be really good at hiding things, or you just might have a deceptive personality trait or something, but you don't really feel yourself as being somebody who's inherently deceptive. That may not ring true for you. You're not bound by your understanding of that particular one little aspect of your chart. So don't give it so much power that you read something about your chart and about you and your chart and you're like, oh, well, that's who I am. I'm kind of stuck with that forever and ever now. That's giving your chart too much power. So I liked that. And then she said, I also promise never to underestimate the wisdom woven in my chart. So don't give it too much power, but don't negate the fact that it does have an impact. And then the third promise was, I promise to always leave room for learning, unlearning, and relearning. So I really liked that because I felt like she's like, okay, let's head into this, but we're not going to give it too much power. We're not going to underestimate it, and we're going to be willing to learn and sometimes unlearn and sometimes relearn. And that's just part of being a human being. So I really liked that right off the bat. So it has a lot of like fill-in things. So it's almost like, you can't see. I'll do a regular walkthrough of this, but I'm just really excited about it. And Patrick has read it, and he's really excited about it. He's the one who told me, please buy this book because we need to talk about it, because we tend to like dive deep and talk about things, and he wants to talk about this book. So that's also a good recommendation. So yeah. That is that. So that's a book that I am excited to dive a little bit deeper in. And I think that it might be a good place for people who, again, need to know a little bit more than just their sun sign, but maybe they're not so ready to like dive into their entire birth chart, right? So I just want to throw that out there because it's something I'm reading. All right, I know I've missed things because I have to stay focused or I'm going to be really, really scattered. Susan says, yeah, I don't use somebody. I think Claire was talking about astrology and tarot. I don't actually use astrology and tarot together. Like, I understand the correspondences. I know what a lot of them are. I've done research and I have looked into the astrological correspondences. However, it's not something that in my practice of reading tarot, it is not a correspondence that weighs heavily. Do I look at the Emperor and say, yes, I know he's traditionally associated with Aries? Sure. I see it the most in the major arcana for sure. It's fairly easy to see them and see the different signs in them, but it isn't a big part of my actual tarot practice. It's, everything that we layer onto tarot is a correspondence layer that somebody has gone and put on the bones of tarot. In the case of a lot of, like if the Rider-Waite-Smith astrological, those, or say the Thoth, those are the Golden Dawns, which was an esoteric group. Those are their correspondences that they've attached tarot. You might read another book that somebody has read that written about tarot and astrology, and those are their associations to that. It's just a layer that you can add on to tarot. But I don't, to me, the two things, I can see resonances between them, but I don't, it's not something that I work heavily with in my tarot readings. So yeah, so that's just, somebody said something about that, so I wanted to talk about it. I think somebody might have asked a question. I feel like Chris asked a question about Patrick's deck. Whether or not it's good for helping someone new to astrology. Yeah, it's a really good tool. Patrick made the deck for the purpose of a study tool. Now you can use it as an oracle. You can use it in different ways. But the purpose of it, from my perspective, was to use as a tool, to be able to help enhance as you are working and studying, lay those things out, see those things laid out. Laying out your birth chart with it is fantastic and really opened my eyes at, clumps of things, which you can see on a chart too. It's just another tool to be able to use, which I quite love. Yes, thank you, Miss Nikki. It really helps if you put the tag at the truth and story. If you look at Nikki's in that last comment, you can see that it turns an orange at truth and story, and it helps me scroll back and kind of try to catch questions that I missed. So if it's directed straight at me, do that, and I'm going to have an easier time in seeing it. If I miss your question, say it again, right? You're welcome to repeat it over again, because I just, miss things. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to scroll back too much. I may just have, if you said something directly to me and I missed it, please just repeat it, because it makes me a little, because if you're just coming on, I'm getting over being fairly sick for a week. And so it makes me a little bit nauseous to scroll back up, if that makes sense. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It's like when the text is scrolling on my eyes, it's kind of like, it's kind of making me a little bit nauseous. Richard has asked, I have not done, I'm going to try to stay focused on astrology for the first hour is what we try to have a topic and stay focused. And then you can throw like random questions at me. Excuse me. I know it's so rude to adjust your bra strap, but we do have them. It's okay. But I have not, and I need to, because it's a deck I use a lot. I love the Chamonix Tarot. It's in my favorite shelf and in my used shelf, because I use it a lot. So I have not. It is on my list. I have, unfortunately, a very long walkthrough list. But good question, because it just kind of, there's a couple decks. I'm like that one and the Art of Life Tarot, which we use every single week. Like there's just a couple that are almost no-brainers that I would think, oh my gosh, I have not even done a walkthrough of that. One of these days I will power through a bunch of them. Okay, so let me scroll back up here. I'm just going to talk about the other books that I have. This is what I recommend. Let me pull this out here. There is a book, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the book. I will try to get it and post it on my Facebook page, because there's another book that I highly, highly recommend. But I had a copy of the book and I literally cut it up, and this was back. I don't know when it was. This had to have been back a ways. So I don't know when it was published, but I photocopied it, and I cut it, photocopied it, and put it in the certain places in a binder. But what I didn't do is put, which I normally will do for stuff like that, is I didn't put the front page in so that I can see the title of the, here. Oh no, that's a Yeah, so I'm going to try to find it because I love this book. But I really recommend, I used to live by these. I had a tarot one, I had astrology, I had like OMs and runes. Back in the day, these little mini binders were my jam. I used them for everything. And so I just kind of collected. So I don't really I don't have books that I look at a lot because all of the information that I'm really paying attention to, I have in this little binder. And I made myself up this chart, which you can't see, I don't think. Now it's too bright to see anything. But I literally I took a thing of a wheel and I put in all of my correspondences. And, that's sort of my snapshot cheat sheet. And so I don't often go back into individual books because I kind of broke down information I wanted in the signs, the planets, the elements, the houses. It's all just kind of put here. The two books that I actually kept, so I don't keep books. If you follow me enough, you probably know that in terms of reference books, I try to keep only a couple books, usually 1 to 2 books on each topic that I am really in love with, right? It doesn't mean I've not read more than them, but I only try to keep 2 because I have a very small apartment and a lot of books. So the 2 that I kept were Astrology for Dummies. I know a real astrologists are going to laugh, but I actually think this is a really good book for just giving you some basic information. Have fun at church. Have a good experience at church, I should say. Claire, sorry about that. That was weird. Have fun. Go rock and roll and have fun at church. I do think this was helpful as just sort of getting your base ideas in there. The other one that I kept was the Complete Book of Astrology by Chris Brandt Risk, An Easy Way to Learn Astrology. This is a Llewellyn book. And I also I know it's Claire. I love Demi's book, or Claire, Miss Kaleidoscope. I love Demi's books. I think they're really helpful in just getting you a succinct vocabulary and understanding of what is this and what does this mean. I think it's actually really good. Dummy books are good for that, and I appreciate them. And this is the other one that I kept because I found this to be very helpful as well. The other thing that I would recommend highly for astrology is Benabel Wen's astrology course. I don't know if I think it's still up because it's all just done. You just get everything. And when I purchased it, it was $40. The only reason I really purchased it is because she gives you so much information, so much textual information. So the workbook aspect of all of the handout information that you get is, on par in terms of what you get for $40. There are also videos. I don't know that I've watched the videos. I purchased it after, I've been reading for a long time and I don't think I had the time to watch all the videos, but her course material is so well done and so much, right? You get so much for it that I think it is kind of a no-brainer if you're diving into it just to have that and maybe have that printed. I don't know if she now maybe has an option to print that stuff out on Lulu. A lot of times her courses do have that option. I don't know that for sure, but I would take a look at that because she does an amazing job at just getting information overload because she's just got that crazy brain, right? And I mean that in a good sense. The other book that I have that Patrick had recommended, which is, again, I don't know that I can say I 100% recommend this because there are some of the things that I was like, I'm not sure if I 100% agree with it, but I do think it's really handy just for kind of a quick overview. The Astrology Using the Wisdom of the Stars in Your Everyday Life by Carol Taylor. it's really well laid out, and it sort of gives you a lot of those things that kind of correspond together. I, of course, that's the book I got. I can't say, Miss Nikki, it's just because I haven't read it. I'm just trying to be very careful. If I haven't read something cover to cover, then I have a hard time saying I recommend something, right? Because I haven't read it all. And I think that this is really good to get a good overview, very much like the Dummies book. And again, I'm not saying that it's the Dummies book is for dummies. It's for way that it lays it out. And so I think that for that, it's really good at what it does to give you this core basis for things. So the reason why I say don't recommend it is that I haven't read it from cover to cover, but I have had it recommended. And so I think that it's something for you to take a look at. Maybe they have it in your bookstore so that you can take a look at it and see, but it does really good to succinctly kind of lay everything out so that and it's very graphically well done. So it's engaging. So it kind of feels like a version of the Dummies for Astrology for Dummies, where it just gives you a nice solid foundation. I don't think you necessarily need both of these. I would say to pick one of those. Maybe you really like the color and the way that this is laid out really well. That might do really good for you. Whereas some people don't really want all the graphics. They just want the information. And then the Dummies book might be better. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's not necessarily that you need both of these. It's like I would put these maybe on the same level. And I don't know, Patrick, I don't think has the Dummies. So I don't know if he would agree with what I'm saying, but that's how I see these two as a really good foundation of giving you what are the basic terminology, what do these things mean, how do these things interact in a way. It's like getting you that broad sweep of that core base, just that foundation. I think that is what these two books are good for. And again, I wouldn't necessarily, maybe even three. I would say this is probably similar to that with the astrology books. I don't think you need, all of these. I think just having one core book that resonates with you would be helpful. So yeah. People always ask me the books that I recommend, and I just don't have a lot of books left because, I'm sorry, I keep hitting the mic, because everything that I pay attention to, right, when I'm working on, because I don't do birth charts, like I don't map out birth charts for people. I generate birth charts just because I do an astrology reading in each, I pull a card for each of the houses. So then you have your snapshot of birth, and then we have a snapshot of what's going on right now. And I really look at elemental energy in a chart and things like that. So there's certain things that I look at to focus in on, and everything that I need for that, I kind of keep succinctly. And so it's hard for me to recommend a lot of books on that. But I am very excited about this one. And I personally think, before even all those like complete books of astrology and let's dive headlong in, something like this, I think, is really fantastic because it just sort of focuses in you. Here's your sun sign, here's your moon sign, here's your rising sign and its ruling planet. And what do these things really mean? And how can you dive into those? And so then you get a really good understanding of those core things. And then from here, like you could deep dive off. I guess that's kind of how I see something like this, giving you that where you're not just like going into the deep end where it gets overwhelming. Because I do think that astrology is one of those things that when you deep dive into astrology, it can very easily get overwhelming because you're looking at signs, you're looking at planets, you're looking at houses, you're looking at aspects. How are these things talking to each other? You're looking at transits and all of these things that are going on. And it can very quickly get like, whoa, like that's a lot of information and a lot of stuff. So to start with just that sun, moon, and rising sign and get a really good feeling for those about yourself, and then kind of dive off from there, seems to me like a smart way to go. But that's, my personal thought on that. See. Thank you, Miss Nikki, for all of your linking. That is just fantastically helpful for people, and I appreciate that so much. I'm just scrolling. Susanna said, I started 35 years ago with Marion D. March and Joan McEvers here in Spain, 4 volumes. Yeah, I mean, there's so much out there. I think that that's another thing that can be really overwhelming, is that I want to see real quick. There's just so many books out there, and is every single book on astrology going to be the one for you? Definitely not. Is every single one even going to be a worthwhile book to get? No, it's like tarot, right? There's tons of tarot books. There's tons of astrology books. And so even just looking to start getting books can be very overwhelming, because you're like, I don't know this person. Like, I don't know how well their idea of astrology lines up with my ideas of astrology. So it can be very like, whoa, I just don't know where to even start here. I really wish I could find this one book, because my core understanding of astrology came from this one book. And so I'm going to have to, find it, and I'll post it on my Facebook, because I know when I see it, I thought I might have had it linked, because I was going to repurchase it. So I thought maybe I had it linked in my Amazon to buy list, but I don't. But I will make sure that I put that out there once I find it, because I do think that well, for me anyways, it was a fantastic tool. Patrick says, I think astrology is so overwhelming because so many start without a basis of the system. Yeah, because it is a system, and that was the thing. And of course, the purpose of these chats isn't to teach you. Like, I am not here to teach you about astrology, because number one, I am not an astrologist, and I do think that teaching something like that should be done by somebody who is astrologist. But it really does become quite, I learned from that sentence structure, right? It's the planets are the sort of the energy, right? It's the what's going on, the houses, or I'm sorry, the signs being how is that interacting, and then you have the houses is where that's happening at. Like, there's a sentence structure that's made there, and when you follow that sentence structure, it becomes pretty interesting to just plug these things in. Okay, so here we have Saturn, and it is in Libra, and it's in the 10th house, and it's almost like sentence diagramming in school, which some people love, like me, and some people do not. But in the end, it is just a system, and it is learnable. It's not impossible to learn it. Now, obviously, if you want to become an actual astrologist, I think that includes taking courses and really diving in, because then you are doing calculations, and you're creating charts, and that this is a whole nother level. And I don't think it's something that you dive completely into without putting in a lot of time, like to have a really solid understanding, and to the degree of which you're moving towards being an astrologist, I do think actually takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of intention, and it takes a lot of dedication. But to have an understanding, a base core understanding of astrology, I think is very doable, and I think that it can really help. I know we've talked about it before. The two apps that I use, I love Time Passages. I think I bought that for Patrick for Christmas a couple years ago, and he still loves it to this day. It was like the best Christmas present I think I ever got him. But I also have another one that I really love now, and I think maybe Patrick uses that. If he's still on, he can say. I'm trying to find it because I rearranged all of my icons, which I don't know. Oh, here I have an astrology folder. I use the three astrology apps that I use is Deluxe Moon, which I really love. Time Passages. That's what I use. To print out birth charts, to generate birth charts and things like that. I use Time Passages. And then Time Nomad, I really like because it puts up reminders to me. It will have sort of the chart of the day. And so let's say Venus is moving into Libra. I get a reminder on my screen that that's happening. And it helps me to kind of keep remembering to check in with those energies because it pops up a notification on my phone. So I enjoy those three. Time Passages is not a cheap app whatsoever. I believe that the Nomad one is free. I can't remember because I already have it on my phone, but I believe that the Time Nomad is free. Time Passages is not free. But if you're somebody who really is working with astrology a lot and really digging into your chart and wanting to follow it, it's well worth the money, but it is pricey. For an app, I think it's pricey. And then Deluxe Moon is free, which I love. Time Passages Pro is a favorite app I use daily. Yep, I definitely do as well. I haven't looked at Astro Gold because I guess once you find it, once you find the ones that work for you, you just kind of stay there. And that's kind of what I've done. Oh, here we go. Richard has a question. Thank you so much for putting the at. How do you feel about the only, I think you're asking, how do I feel about the only astrology book you'll ever need? Is that what you're asking? Oh, I don't have that one. I thought you were talking about this one. This is what I know. When I went to look, I believe that one was around at the time. I don't remember what the date is. I feel like that was around. This one is a 6th printing in 2014. It should show the original printing. 2007. So this was originally in 2007. I feel like the only one you'll ever know was out at the same time, but I could be wrong. I looked through both of them, and this is the one that I decided on. So I can't tell you now why that is, but I decided that I liked this one more for some reason or another, and this is the book that I picked from those two. So I don't have that book that you're talking about, so I can't really recommend or not recommend it because I don't have it. So yeah, sorry if that's not very helpful at all, but that is what it is. Okay, scrolling back here. Enjoy your pizza. Somebody just said they were pizza time. I saw that as I scrolled up, so I don't know who it was, but whoever it is, enjoy. Enjoy your pizza. I'm going to stop scrolling up now. I don't see any other ats, or any orange splats that say I have to pay attention to it. So I'm going to stop. In terms of astrology decks, I should have pulled them all out, but I did not. I do have, although I think I recently got rid of some astrology decks as well. In terms, is this one of them? No. See, I don't think I should have pulled them out. So that will have to be another, I'll have to do maybe a video. The only one that I use is Patrick's because, in all fairness, I am biased. A, he's my best friend. B, I was there all the way he was making it. So to me, his deck is my perfect deck because I was able to say, this is what I need to have the lunar nodes because I do a lot of past life work. So astrology, I mostly use for energetic work before I do an astrology reading. And then I use it a lot for past life. So that's where my focus is, which is a different focus of what Patrick's is, or somebody else might have. So I was able to say, look, I need to have the lunar nodes. I need to have Chiron. Those were certain things that I wanted. I didn't want keywords. So I was able to have input. It's nice to have a BFF who's making that kind of deck, because then you can be like, look, this is what I really, really am pushing for. In addition to CoStar, may I suggest the app, The Pattern? I will write it down if I can find a piece of paper, because apparently I usually have sticky notes everywhere, and I have 0 sticky notes in front of me. Okay, what's a piece of paper that I could steal? You know what? I've got printed paper here. What kind of a state of affairs is it that I don't have any? Oh, I see. They fell all onto the floor. Okay. Let me write it down, The Pattern, and I will check it out. I'm not sure what that is. I'm assuming it is an astrology app, but I'll take a look at it. Thank you. I like for moon decks, I really like the Moonology deck. So that is, let me write it down. How about I will do, I don't know which ones I have left, but I will do a video. You know how I do those videos where all the decks that I have on a theme? I will try to do a video on astrology decks. But I do really like the Queen of the Moon. There's 2 moon decks I have, the Queen of the Moon and the Moonology deck. I really love the Queen of the Moon deck. And so that's the one that I use mostly for moon stuff. And then I use the Living Wheel astrology cards. I have 2 sets, one that I keep in order. I have one that I've started to shuffle as an oracle. I don't use astrology decks for the most part as an oracle. It's just not the way that I use them. I use them to lay out energies. And so that's how I use a deck. So I feel like I'm not the best person to be asking about astrology decks, other than like Patrick's, where it's a tool for laying out what's going on above and then pulling tarot cards below. Or if I'm doing a past life reading, this is what the key past life information is there, and so on and so forth. So I don't use astrology cards for the most part as oracle decks. So I feel like I'm not the best person to recommend astrology decks as oracle decks, if that makes sense. And even the moon decks, I don't really use, though I like the Queen of the Moon as an oracle deck. But when I'm working with moon energy, I'm working with the cycles of the moon, right? I don't want to pull 3 random moons, because I'm just not how I'm generally working with it. So I feel like I'm not, again, the best person for that. Now I have a picture of this on my Instagram. Every turn of the wheel, so if there's a solstice, the equinoxes, and the cross quarters, a week before, say the cross quarter that just came up, I pull a card a day for the 7 energy points as a check-in and going into the kind of refreshing for that cross quarter. And I used Patrick's deck for that as an oracle deck. So I just pulled it randomly. That's the first time I've ever done that. And it was really fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So it's not that you can't use astrology decks as oracle decks. I just don't have a lot of experience with it because I don't use it a lot. Now, Patrick on his Instagram channel has started doing oracle pulls. And so that's been really interesting to watch, because it's just not a way I use astrology decks for the most part. So, okay. let's see. Miss Kaleidoscope passed on Queen of the Moon. Yeah, it's not something I use a lot, but I like it better than the Moonology. That's just those two I got, I think, around the same time. And I liked the Moonology, or I liked the Queen of the Moon more than I liked the Moonology. I think somebody, and I know somebody asked me about the Sacred Destinies. So let me go ahead and pull. It's at 4:55. So let me go ahead and pull our weekly card, and then I will try to remember. Let me put them in front of me. That way, I remember. I can just answer it quickly. Miss Nikki won't shoot an arrow at me. I have two decks because I took one of them and I trimmed it. I love this deck so much. I wish that it had the landscapes on the instead of keywords on it. It has a keyword on it, and I'd rather have the landscape on it. But I didn't want it only because I like the border in that it feels like you're walking into a landscape, but I wanted to trim it and I love it trimmed. So one is untrimmed and one is trimmed. That's all the way down. So that is, here, I'll just show them real quick. Look, we're almost done with things, and so we can do it. But let me just show you the difference. I also put gold on the edge of mine. So, for example, this is the borders, and I don't normally love really rich, intense decks with a white border, but I actually do like this, and I do like the way you feel like you're stepping into a world. It's a doorway into a landscape, but I absolutely love this borderless version. And it goes really well with my more animistic, shamanistic style decks. And the size is really conducive to that. So I'm a huge fan of this cut down. And so I love them both. And so that's why you see two of these boxes on I don't know who asked it, but somebody asked me why I had two of the Sacred Destiny boxes. And it's because one is trimmed borderless and one is not. So that is the question. That answers that question. Yeah, it's gorgeous borderless. I really do love them both. So, and I also use it for the 4 quarters when I do year aheads, and that smaller size just makes it fits on my table better. So, it's just sometimes, sometimes it's practical reasons as well. Okay, so let's pull our card of the week. Again, I apologize. We talked about astrology, I think way back at the beginning. It just didn't dawn on me until right before I came on, but I think that's okay. I think it's a good subject to touch bases with. And because I was excited about this particular book, why not talk about it another time? It's okay. So I appreciate people's patience. Oh my goodness. There's a tarot creator who said they were creating a deck for each planet. Whoa. Wow. That would be really interesting. Matthew. Okay. So we pull a weekly card from the Art of Life tarot deck. This is one of my favorite things because I actually use this. Like, I reference this and pay attention to it throughout the week. And so we need a new one for this week. No sorries needed. Thank you, Miss Nikki. But you know me. I do less sorries than I've done in the past. That's the best I can do. If I've missed something, especially if it wasn't astrology related, if I've missed something, make sure to re-ask it because I've kind of stayed focused as much as I could on these things. But I mean, I think to wrap up the talk about astrology, I do find it to be very useful. I feel like it is one of those tools. Sorry, I wonder, Mr. Adam, if I don't think so. Sadly, Adam, I believe sorries are part of a fundamental religious, being a female in a fundamental religion. Again, not all Christianity, but the way I was raised was extreme fundamentalism. And that puts what I call the worm of the earth syndrome on people, especially females. And so being sorry for your very existence is a byproduct of those types of conditionings. And I'm pretty sure that's where it came from me. Other people get it from other ways, but I'm pretty sure that's where I got mine. Or maybe there's some Canadian in there somewhere. I don't know. Apparently Canadians are apologetic as well. I did not know that. I didn't know that that was a trait of Canadians that is generally seen. That's how I am, Adam. Somebody could slam into me rudely, and I would be like, I'm so sorry that I was taking up the space that caused you to slam into me. So that's definitely me, but I'm not Canadian. Michelle said, what denomination? I grew up what I would call fundamental Baptist, because I don't even like to use Baptist because Baptist is not, there's a lot of normal Baptists out there, I suppose. But I was happy, comfortable Catholic up until about, it was the beginning of fifth grade, I know, because fifth grade, I went from just like a normal person to no pants, no music, no movies, no Christmas, no Easter. It really, it was a huge paradigm shift entering into fifth grade. And so it would be what I would be called fundamental Baptist. Like it was very extreme Christian mindset. But I don't like to just say Christian because there's lots of normal. I know I have many friends and family who are normal, loving, respectful Christians. And so I don't want to blame that on all Christians. That was just a subset. Anything taken to a fundamental level can get a little bit crazy. And that definitely did for me. Yeah, Southern Baptists from my growing up, we always thought of Southern Baptists as being very too relaxed, right? So Southern Baptists would have been those like, they're kind of pushing the edge of the heathens. So yeah, no, it was definitely, it's not the kind of Christianity that you're really going to stumble into super easily, I don't think. It was just a very extreme form. It was full on hellfire, damnation. Worms are going to chew at your bones for all of eternity if you don't do X, Y, and Z. Women are to be silent. They're under the umbrella of the men. Again, no music, no movies where, you can go to movies, holidays. It was very, very intense version of it, a very legalistic, I would say. And that's where I think the problems come in, right? When you get to that extreme of legalism, where people are too focused on rules and what doing something in this has to be done, this, and this way. It's very black and white. anything can be taken to an extreme and you lose the beauty. There's a lot of beauty in Christian mysticism and Christian ideology. There's a lot of power and beauty there that get, in my opinion, get ruined when you go into that black and white mode of thinking. And that's not just Christianity. There are forms of any probably religion out there that can become very legalistic, very black and white, very much our way or the highway. And that causes problems no matter what the religion is. And so it's more people, right? That's what I feel like when you get into extremism and fundamentalism and things of that nature. It really doesn't have to do with the core belief system. It's people. It's there's something about people who come together. When you get enough people that come together that think that their way is the right way, that breeds fundamentalism and breeds this is the only way that it can possibly be. It's a human flaw, not a spiritual flaw, I think. And I think that we have to be careful of that no matter what it is. I mean, you can have extreme ends of a paganism, of a pagan way of thinking. If you take it to an extreme that this is the only way to do it and everybody else is wrong and our way is the right, it can happen to anybody. It's a human mindset that takes a belief and really just takes something that is supposed to be beautiful and mystic and very much it's a mystery. True religion, or true spirituality. Religion to me is about people. Spirituality is about belief and where we understand and try to understand the world. But true spirituality is a mystery. There isn't any black and white. It's a mystery that we get to dive into and figure out way that we see the world through the way that we see through that mystery. Religion to me is about human construction, and that's where things get very problematic from my personal perspective. Matthew says, as someone who's raised also in a Baptist house, but not in the way you were, agreed. There is an extreme and in people. Yeah. An experience just isn't healthy. It's so true. I think people are usually programmed to deny information outside of their programming. Yeah. I mean, it's probably best for social constructs, right? Because I do think that often religions are social constructs. And I think that having those types of things are very helpful to keep society united and believing the same thing and keep people in line. If you have a certain way of believing this is the right way and the only way, you're abdicating your responsibility for your choices over to a preacher or over to a leader or over to a certain set of rules. And you're saying, I'm not responsible for myself any longer. I'm giving that over. That's why you always call them like sheep, right? You think about the followers as sheep because you're giving over your way of thinking to the shepherd. And that's very useful probably in keeping, cultural things unified and together. It's certainly very great for the people at the top of the pyramid, right, that are having that control and people not thinking for themselves. So, I mean, I'm sure there's great reasons for why people do that and why it maybe used to be beneficial in some ways. But it's very problematic, right? The interesting things that we roll from. Susie's glad that she was raised agnostic. That is an excellent thing to be raised. Chris, oh, you got them all. I feel like that was fast, Chris. I am very glad to see that. And I'm so glad that you got them and that you love them. I am very impatiently waiting for my test copy of my Oracle deck. It's very impatient. That's another thing. Let's talk about why do human brains think that if we go to a website to check on the process of something 20 times in a day, that it's actually going to change. Nothing is going to change, right? It's not going to all of a sudden be on its way here from 2 hours ago. But I just can't stop doing it. People's brains are so interesting. um the tribal unified, yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, I'm sure that there is actually a reason why obviously humans do this, but it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating that, we can take something so beautiful and so mystical, such as spirituality, and turn it into something that is legalistic and restrictive and brainwashing. I mean, the way that I was raised, it is brainwashing. And of course, again, I recognize that mine wasn't the typical experience that people would have had, but it's brainwashing. When you get to that degree of control and legalism, it's brainwashing. And it's just sad because it is such a beautiful, it can be such a beautiful experience. And to have that twisted and to have human nature seem to lean towards twisting that is just, to me, it's pretty sad. Okay, I know I need to pull, Miss Nikki's like, can you pull a card? Pull a card. Richard says, I'm not the only one. I recently ordered the Vendor Tarot deck and I'm constantly, I know, it's so ridiculous. I'm usually pretty good when I'm purchasing things. Obviously, if it's, to me, it's so exciting to get when you painted, 46 paintings and you're finally going to get them like in your hand as a cohesive deck. There's this like maniac kind of extra level. Oh, I just threw cards around, because I want it to all, be right and everything to look good. And so there's that stress level that amps it up even more. But I am definitely a person, if I purchase something, I want a tracking thing so I can watch as it moves from one space to another. Okay. Let's see. I think we probably, again, if I've missed something, please don't hesitate to pop it in there or restate it. It's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because I missed it while I was talking. Yeah, it's true. The idea of waiting. So it's the idea of waiting that makes it even more exciting. I definitely can agree with that. Yeah. It's like just turn your brain onto something else, take that excitement and use it to do something else. I've been, starting the expansion to the deck. I started yesterday because I was literally like, I just like to paint, so I always have something on the table. And B, I just literally was driving me nuts, like waiting for it. Because it was supposed to come earlier, and then they had a delay, and so it's like not due till the 20th. I'm sorry, I'm looking outside because it is snowing again. We have been dumped on this week, and it is now big fluffy snowing again. So I tried to turn it in. I'm like, okay, well, I've got all this energy. I'm all excited about it. I might as well just start painting the next section. so that's kind of how I feel. Oh, my batteries. Oh, I didn't bring the plug over here. 1 second. Let me pull this through here. 1 minute. Let's see if I can pull it through. Ooh, carefully. I know they are really shuffled. Okay. There we go. Okay, let's pull it. These are shuffled cards. What card are we going to? 3 of Cups. Those who bring sunshine into the lives of others cannot keep it from themselves. Sir J.M. Barrie. So here we have the 3 of Cups. The number 3 for me is a number of growth. And then the cups are about our emotional, internal feelings, energy, but they're also about how those emotions and those feelings reach out and connect with other people. It's also, though, and I think this is one of the things that I've really started trying to remind myself of, is the fact that the cups aren't just about relationships, and the cups aren't just about our feelings. The cups for me is the water of the high priestess, right? It's water. Water sits at the belly. So when you're doing geomancy, where you have fire up here, you have water in the throat, you have air in the throat, you have water in the belly, and then of course you have earth at your feet. It's that deep intuitive energy. So it's also, a growth of our intuition. It's a growth that as we connect inward to outward, this is an increase in our intuitive energy. This is listening to our instincts and growing from those instincts. And I think that often gets kind of sideswiped by the three ladies partying up. They're always dancing or drinking or, doing something in the Three of Cups. And we're like, oh, friendship and getting together with people and things of that nature, which is great. And that's a piece of it, but it's not the whole pie of the Three of Cups, right? The Three of Cups is also about the way that our internal scape reaches out and connects outward. And sometimes that is the three ladies drinking and dancing that Adam likes. I'm not against that, but it's not the whole picture, right? And it's more, the Three of Cups is more than just go out and have a party with your friends. It could be that that's what you need to be doing, but it's not the whole puzzle to the Three of Cups. There's a lot of growth that can happen when you reach out and connect with other people. And, I love when these kinds of cards show up, like when we're having this communal talking, right? Having this conversation. We can have growth by having a conversation between like-minded people who are getting together and having a chit chat and enjoying ourselves. We can have a bit of deep conversation. We can have a little bit of fun conversation, and we both can grow from it. And that is represented by the Three of Cups. So I really love when we're talking and community things sort of come up, we get them a lot. But I do agree with, Sir J.M. Barrie, that those who bring sunshine into the lives of others can't help but get it themselves. When we make somebody else happy and we bring light to somebody else, we inherently bring light to ourselves. So I do think that is a beautiful representation of the Three of Cups. And I like this painting here. Adam is all for the dance. He's not going to give up with the dancing, drinking ladies. And again, I'm not saying that is a wrong way to interpret the Three of Cups, but I just feel like that's just like the surface level. And it's like, let's not forget that there is a lot of depth to a card like the Three of Cups. It's not just go have a good time with your friends, even though that might be the message. There's more there to dive into. I guess that's what I'm trying and probably failing to get across. So I'm going to put that in here. This is very fortuitous to me, because just before I came on, one of my sisters, I have 7 of us in our family of children. And one of them's like, oh, I miss, we haven't gotten together for a while. And so we're all like, okay, let's get something together tomorrow so that we can have, kind of have a get together and can reconnect. And then to have the Three of Cups came up is very significant for me. Wendy's name originated from J.M. Barrie and Peter Pan. Love it, love it, love it. Dylan Wilson said, how did you learn numerology? This is interesting because I'm a researcher. So even when I was younger, and as I just got done talking about, I did grow up in a very fundamental religion. But one of the benefits, I will say, one of the benefits of that mindset is that there was a expectation of scholarship. I'm not a big fan of people who purport to be Christians, but they've never read the Bible. I'm kind of like, I don't understand how, and I apologize if you're one of those people, but that's kind of mind-boggling to me to think. And there are people that haven't, from cover to cover, they've read the Bible, but they've not read the Bible from cover to cover. And the way that I was raised was lots of research. I read the Bible cover to cover 9 times, and then who knows, with all the bits and pieces about it. So, part of that is a dive into numerology. Numerology is all throughout the Bible. There are definitely numerological trends through the Bible. And so that was the first way that I was exposed to working and thinking about numbers and the significance and the symbology of numbers was through that. But then later on, playing card divination has numbers that are built into it. My first tarot book. So I had, for 9.5 years, I used a Llewellyn Tarot, but my tarot book that I used was like a little guidebook that was a Marseille-based guidebook. And so that had a good section on numerology in it. And so that was one of the ways. I'm reading right now, this was sent to me, but this is called Numerology and the Divine Triangle by Faith Javane and Dusty Bunker. Let me see if I can write that. Numerology and the Divine Triangle. I'm not giving you a link here. Maybe Miss Nikki can find it. I don't know. But I'm just writing it down because I'm slaughtering the person's name. And this is really interesting so far. I can't say 1,000%. I say thumbs up. I recommend this because I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it's very interesting. And there's a whole section at the end about tarot. There's not a lot of books that really focus on tarot, and there's a whole section at the end, going through the major arcana, the wands, the cups, the swords, the pentacles, and then pulling sort of all of that together. And I'm really enjoying it. So, I don't ever go into a book thinking that the book has to be everything to me, right? I don't have to agree with everything in a book in order to get something out of it, but to take something away from it. And I'm really enjoying this. So far, this is what I'm reading at the moment. But my initial, the question, I'm sorry, because I know you didn't ask me that. The question was how I first got into numerology, and it would have been through the Bible. That was been my first exposure to working with numerology and numbers as a symbol. I think it's a very old way of understanding numbers and the power of numbers and the relationships with numerological relationships, I think is very old, and you see it throughout many different ways of looking at things. So yeah, numbers are extremely important. Mythology as well. I was always very interested in mythology, and working with numbers is also woven into a lot of mythological aspects also. So that would have been a mythology first, and then it would have been moving into numbers in the Bible, and then from there into sort of Marseille and things like that. So that's kind of my trajectory with numerology. Excuse me. Yeah, it's hard, Dylan. It's hard to find anything that is just numerology and tarot. There's a lot of books on numerology, as Molly said, but they are mostly looking at numerology by itself. And I have another book. I'll have to find it. I have another book that I think is really good also. And there's a number deck that I know I have a video up on a deck about numbers that I actually find really fantastic and helpful also. But numerology is a system by itself. So creating your birth number and your life number, your soul number, going through and changing your name into numbers. Like, this is a whole system in and of itself that some people like myself heavily layer into tarot. So everybody has correspondences that they layer onto tarot. Some people layer astrology, some people layer Kabbalah, these types of things. For me, it's numbers and elements. And so most of the books, though, are how to do readings and how to do birth charts, so to speak, based off of numbers. And so it's not just all about, but this one does have a nice chunk that relates. Let me find the beginning of it. It's half of the book. It has a Bible numerology, which I thought was really interesting and very much was in alignment with the way that I had seen things. But yeah, starting on page 123, so more than half of the book does relate numbers to tarot. And you don't find that as much. So I was really excited when this was sent to me because there is so much tying there, which I think is fantastic. So yeah, I'm enjoying this a lot. In my second part of tarot side this year, I broke my tarot class into two parts. So one part beginning, just going over all the cards. The second part, one of the classes, we're going to dive into the numbers much more because that's the primary way I read is the number plus the element. And so I'm kind of reading this and prep for that too, to see what other extra things can be pulled out. So there, I know that was more than what you were asking, but there you go. What got me into tarot? Claire says, you may have touched on this in many videos in the past, but I haven't seen them yet. My first experience with tarot, I had, when I was in my early 20s, my junior year in high school, I walked away from the fundamental religion that I was in. And I was in a private school that was based on that fundamental religion. But and I couldn't walk away from the school because I was a minor, right? But in my head, in my heart, I had left that religion behind, but I still had to finish that year off. I left and went to a totally different church and sort of broke away from that mindset that I was under, right? That mindset that was, in my opinion, is brainwashing and never worked for me or fit. But then in my early 20s, I had a total break away from religion of any sort and basically told, God, whoever they might be, you stay over here. I'm going to stay over here. I'm going to go with the I don't know and I don't care at this moment about spirituality. I just had to, there was no disentangling religion and man's input from what I really know and understood and believed about the spiritual world. And so it was just like, go over there and I'm going to go over here and do what I've got to do. And so after that break, it was a very solid break and a bit of a desert time for me. We have those desert times of just having really no connections to anything whatsoever, just saying, I just can't deal with this. I had a very sick son at the time. And I was like, I can't deal with this. Everything sit over here. I'll sit over here. But when I started to, I think we're by nature spiritual people. I certainly am. And so there was a certain point, it was like, okay, I want to start, like, now I've got to figure out what I do believe. I know what I don't believe. And I know that I don't want anything to do with any of that. I don't know what I do actually believe. I started researching different things, all those things that, you don't research when you're a fundamental Christian, like tarot and everything, oghams and runes and things of that nature. And I remember studying, looking up to, so it would have been, my mid 20s or something. I do remember looking something up about tarot. And I remember seeing Rider-Waite-Smith. I think that's all that was around at the time. Certainly image wise, that was before the web was what the web is. And I remember seeing images of the major arcana. I'm like, nope, tarot's not for me. It's religious. I saw it as being, it was not a lot of information, and just looking at the Rider-Waite-Smith images, I thought that's religion. That's the devil. That's the judgment cards, the judgment seat of Christ. That's the Garden of Eden and the Lover's card. Like this is based around Christian ideology, and that wasn't something that I was interested in. So I just said, nope, tarot's not for me. And that was it. I didn't work with tarot. I worked with playing card divination. I worked with oghams. I worked with runes. And then in early, I don't know, 1999 or maybe 2000, I was visiting a friend in Maine, and we were just kind of going around to a couple different shops, and there just happened to be a shop. It wasn't a tarot shop or anything like that. It was just it was just like a little gift shop kind of thing. And they had the Llewellyn tarot out. So the deck was out on a table. And so I was able to actually see the cards, like the deck itself was out. And it was Welsh mythology. Like I grew up reading about these, this mythological cycle. It was all. I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's more. There's more. I'm trying to find a major arcana here. Of course, when you want to find them, you're not going to find them, right? So the sun was Lou. Like I was like, I know who Lou is. Like I understand Lou. This is why I always say this when this comes up, but this is why I was so horrified when I saw a naked baby in a sun card. I was like, what? Like I learned to read the sun card with Lou on a horse here, very strong and confident and warrior-esque, right? What is a naked baby doing on the sun card? So had Bronwyn here for the beautiful star, had Aaron Rod for the Wheel of Fortune. I'm just trying to find some of the major arcanas here. The Keeper of the Well. I mean, look at this Keeper of the Well for Temperance. This is such a beautiful deck. Let's see if I can. Every time I start to look at it, I get so nostalgic. Caradwyn has for the High Priestess. I had Bron for the Emperor, I believe. Rhiannon is in here as the Empress. So anyways, I saw this. This was like, I don't know. I want to say 2000 maybe. 2019. It could have been a year under or above. And so anyways, I bumped into this. I was like, oh, wait a minute. This doesn't have to be like the devil was, I think, the huntsman. It's like, okay, this doesn't have to be, it can be in a different ideology in it. And so I thought I had one. Yeah, Chris, I'm 99. Well, I'm surprised if I didn't. I thought it was one of my very first ones. Nobody can find it. Yeah, I swear I did one as well. I might not have, Chris. You know what? Because by the time I started doing videos, I had trimmed this all the way down to no borders. And I might not have done a walkthrough because I would have thought, well, it's not how it looks when you buy it. So maybe I didn't do a walkthrough. I don't know. I'll see if I can find it. If not, I will make one. That'd be terrible not to have a walkthrough of my first deck on the channel. So anyways, this was the only tarot deck I had for 9.5 years. And that's how I got into tarot. I saw this deck and it was connected with Welsh mythology. And I was like, I understand the archetypes of the archetypes that were there were archetypes that I understood and that I knew and that weren't related to Christian ideology, which at the time, now it doesn't bother me whatsoever. But at the time that, in my early 20s, that was a big thing that I just like, I don't want to, that's stepping backwards. When I saw the Christian ideology in the major arcana at the time, it felt like that would be stepping back into an ideology that I couldn't find a comfortable place with. Now, later down the road, I spent a lot of time, a good solid couple years, in reconciling my experience with Christianity with the understanding that isn't the only way to view it. And there are things that I can now say there are beautiful spaces for spirituality and mysticism within Christianity. And I have a deep respect for that. And I can reconcile those things and understand and work with the archetypes with no problem. But in those in my early 20s, I wasn't in that space. And so it's so funny now because when you think about the way that I was raised, tarot would be something that would be considered satanic. But when I actually was exposed to tarot, I chose not to dive into tarot because it was too Christian. That to me that cracks me up. Given the way that I was raised, it cracks me up that I don't know. There's just something funny about that juxtaposition of I would have been taught that it was satanic, but when I actually was exposed to it, I was like, no, that's not for me. It's too Christian. That's a very long answer to somebody's question. That's all right. That's okay. I'm not going to keep scrolling up. It definitely makes me nauseous to do so. I think isn't it Dylan? Not spelled the same way, but I believe Dylan's on the Hanged Man. Of course, I'm not going to find it right now, but I believe and I don't have the guidebook right here. Hello, Miss Jamie. I see Miss Jamie. Sorry, I was babbling. Somebody asked me, it's like asking, about your whole birth or something like that. Okay, Miss Nikki says I haven't. So I'm not going to try to scroll back because Miss Nikki says I haven't forgotten. But I think somebody did confirm that I haven't done a full walk. This is why I fell in love with the Two of Swords. Okay, I'm going to put this on my list for my next walkthrough because it's my first deck. We can't have and I only use this deck. I mean, look at Merlin. I can't have a whole channel full of walkthroughs and not have my very first deck. This is why I fell in love with tarot, was because of this deck. I'm trying to, of course, I'm not going to find the Hanged Man because I'm looking for it. Paradise for the Fool. The Wild Herdsman. I love it. And this is why I bought this deck. So this is why I bought the deck, because then that day in 1999 or the year 2000 or 2001, one of those 3 years, when I saw this card, I was like, I know this energy. I've spent a lifetime with some very young age in this mythology section. I know the Wild Herdsman. I know the Wild Huntsman. Like, I know that archetype and that energy. And so when I saw this versus the Devil, I was like, yes, I can do tarot. I can do that. That was the card that sold me. I love the Tower. But of course, I'm seeing everything except for the Hanged Man. I'm 99% sure it's Dylan on the Hanged Man. It's been a while since it might be David, or I don't know. I am not Welsh, so I can't pronounce it. It might be David. Anyways, I'll do a walkthrough. Yes, I will put it to the front of because that's just wrong. It's my first deck. It's the only deck I used for 9.5 years. Like, it's entirely wrong that I don't have a walkthrough of it. I know, but it's just one of those things when you're going through a deck, you don't find you don't find the one that you're looking for. I know when I'm doing it like this and I have the camera above, people I know are like, it's right there. And then, I just go right by it. Okay. So let's see. That was a long answer to how did I get involved in tarot? But that's how I got involved in tarot. Thank you, gift shop, that had the entire deck just laying out on a table. You don't see that really anymore. When I started, obviously was looking at tarot, there wasn't in my area, there wasn't bookstores, there weren't that I was aware of. There wasn't any like new age bookstores. I would say that Barnes and Nobles. I did get my Celtic Tree Oracle because I worked with OM, and I did get that from Barnes and Nobles. And I believe the Fairies Oracle my friend bought me around the same time. So those are the 3 decks that I used for 9.5, 10 years were the only decks I ever used. The only tarot was the Llewellyn, and then I had the Heart of Fairy Oracle by Brian Froud, and I had the the Celtic Tree Oracle. And those are the only decks that I used. Those 2 decks were at Barnes and Nobles, but there weren't really lots of decks out. And I've never seen decks just out and about. Now, about an hour from me, there's a shop where they have a lot of open stock decks that you can actually look at the cards. But that was the first time I'd ever seen it and could actually pick up a deck. Adam got started by hanging out at Prairie Sky Books in Winnipeg. They must have had more decks than were around in my rural area, or you're obviously, or not obviously, you're potentially much younger than me. Now, right? We can't even walk without tripping over new tarot decks, right? It's definitely a different world from certainly when I had first looked at tarot, and then even when I got into tarot. It's a different world to how many decks there are out there. Like there's so many more decks that makes it, wonderful and crazy at the same time. I think some people are leaving. Bye, Matthew. Be careful getting home. Yeah, it sounds like a couple people are talking about oh, see, he's not too much younger. So there probably weren't a lot when he was younger either. And of course, I also live in rural United States. I grew up in the rural areas of the United States. So there's a lot less. I'm sure in New York or some other bigger cities or someplace in California, there were probably a whole lot more than what I was exposed to. So let's be fair. Let's be fair. Susie's mom gave. That's so awesome. I love that. I love that I gave my daughter her first deck too. Okay. Yes. Richard says, has there ever been a tarot deck that's made you uncomfortable working with it? Not too many. Like I'm even uncomfortable is probably a strong word. Like, I guess there are certainly decks that haven't inspired me to work with them. And I guess that's one thing. But actually feeling good night, Miss Kaleidoscope, get some sleep. Stay safe. I think I saw that there were storms your way or something. So stay safe and warm and dry. So for something to make me uncomfortable would have to tap into areas that would make me uncomfortable for some reason. There was definitely somebody gave me, and I can't remember who to blame. I know it might have been Jen. I don't know. Somebody had given me a deck that had psychotic clowns on it. I joked about it all the time. I kept it in a box, and people were like, "Let us see it. Let us see it." I ended up getting rid of it because I'm not afraid of clowns. I don't particularly like clowns, but I'm not afraid of clowns. But it was like a tarot deck of a murdering clown. Like every card had like bloody clown on it. And that deck made me uncomfortable, and it would certainly not be a deck that I would use. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It just isn't a deck that I would use because of that. There was also a oracle deck, like a demon oracle deck. I think it was an oracle deck that had demons in it. And that made me uncomfortable. And that's because of my upbringing. So it's not that I felt like, I'm not scared per se of demons. Now, I don't believe that all energy that's out there is good energy, right? You can't believe in angels and then not believe, or angelic energy and not believe that there's darker energy as well. But it's not an energy that I particularly want to open or invite. And so that again has to do with something that makes me uncomfortable for some reason. And maybe that means I need to work with that energy at some point, but maybe it's not the time to do so. So that deck made me very uncomfortable. And something that I moved on. No, it wasn't the Fallen Angels. It was something else. I've not looked at that one. The concept of fallen angels for me is something different than demons. So I don't think it was that one. So that definitely made me uncomfortable. And again, I don't think it's a bad deck. It's just decks. The question was decks that might have made me uncomfortable to work with. I wouldn't work with a Ouija board because that makes me uncomfortable, right? It's not that I think that Ouija boards are all evil. It's not because I think that anybody who uses a Ouija board is inherently bad. It's because I've watched a lot of horror movies. And I also do, again, think that people need to be careful in what energetically what you're pulling into your space. And because of my uncomfortability, it wouldn't be something that I would deal with or use. So that's something that makes me uncomfortable, even though I can rationalize it, right? So I think uncomfortability isn't necessarily because something is bad. It's just because it hits something on you that just says, I just don't feel comfortable with this. So it's not something that I would be reading with. I'm trying to think. I actually, the other deck that I can think of, so I remember that one, and I remember the Bloody Clown one. And the only other one I can remember was the Wild Unknown. This is kind of funny, but that was, again, that it triggered when I hunted down the Wild Unknown. I think that I found it it was a regular store up about an hour from me. And I went up there and I got it. And as soon as I opened it, it made me really uncomfortable because it triggered things to do with my son who had passed away. At that time, it had only been a couple of years since he had passed away. And it really triggered a sense of uncomfortableness because of that. And I sold it. I think it was the first deck that I sold. Like immediately, like a day or two later, I sold it, and it just made me really uncomfortable. Just again, that was because of it being, it was resonated at a space that I wasn't ready to deal with in terms of my son. So that was the only other deck I remember having that uncomfortable reaction to. No, I love it. I've used the Wild Unknown in hundreds, probably literally, of readings. Maybe not hundreds, but certainly up there past 100. I used it a lot in my practice. It just, at that time, it wasn't a space that I was ready for. And then my friend Patrick sent me the Wild Unknown, and I used the deck a ton, and I love it. It was just, it just had that reaction in that moment. It wasn't a space for me to work with it. So it's just interesting how we have those things that do that. Any thoughts on the Demon Possessed, as in, is a deck called the Demon Possessed, Zach? I've not heard of it, so I don't have any opinions on it, but I probably it would not be something that I would be interested in working with. I definitely agree, Matt. And that's why I want to make sure, bye, Chris. I want to make sure that I'm not saying that I think that Ouija boards are inherently evil. I don't. It's just not something that I would work with because of the way that I was raised. It was really big impact put on them being satanic. We would have book and record and Ouija board and tarot card burnings. Like, it was a very fundamental religion. And so people would get together and throw like their negative, their negative influences into the bonfire. So crazy when you think about it. and Ouija boards would pin, and people like, oh my gosh, like it's not melting, it's burning. It's that whole kind of ridiculousness. And so when you combine those things together with horror movies, I love horror movies. So when you combine those things together with horror movies, and my own personal experiences, that there isn't all the energy out there in the world is not something that is wonderful and light. You don't have the light without the dark. And so I am always very careful to protect my own living space. I think it's very important to me to be mindful and have boundaries up, and so it's just not something that I would that's not something I would work, because I have those experiences. It's not a positive thing for me, and so it's not something I would work with. I hope that makes sense. I know. I totally agree, flamboyant, clairvoyant. Trust me, I had no I had no control over it. That's for sure. Oh, Zach says he thinks it's a tarot. I don't have any thoughts on it, Zach, because I didn't even know it existed. It would not, for the reasons I just said, that would not be a deck that I would work with. So hopefully that, yeah, I don't even remember what the original question was. I think decks that made me uncomfortable. But I do think most of those things are just personal reactions because of our experiences, right? How we're raised, our experiences, all those kinds of things. For me, tarot and oracle is a tool, right? I don't personally put any inherent power into decks. So for me, a deck, when I receive a deck, it's just pieces of paper with artwork on it. It's just a tool for me to be able to use. But if it's a tool that I don't feel comfortable with, then instead of getting into the space where I'm getting the readings and the messages, instead of doing that, I'm sitting there being uncomfortable by the images. And so it's not a good tool for me. Just as if I had a hammer that was too heavy for me, or was shaped in some weird way that made it really hard for me to use, I wouldn't be able to get into the rhythm of building a house or building a box or whatever I'm doing if it wasn't a comfortable fit. And so I feel the same way about tarot and oracle cards. If the tool of the deck is not a comfortable fit for me, then it isn't going to set me in the space where I can read. Instead, I'm going to be distracted by what's going on. And so that tends to be how I look at it. I don't think it's because, I'm not going to use a deck on demons because that's got inherently evil energy in it. No, it's a tool, and it's just not a tool that's suited for me. It might be suited for somebody else. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I don't know if I've missed anything. Do I think that a deck warms up to me? Yes, I definitely think that we can have an instant reaction to a deck. Like, this has happened to me tons of times, right? Where a deck's saying like, I just don't feel it, or like that is just not my style of artwork, or whatever. We can have sort of an instant reaction, and we can end up really resonating and warming up to that deck, and getting that, really end up finding it to be a very powerful deck to work with. So I definitely think, and even things that make you uncomfortable, I would say if you're in a good space psychologically and emotionally, in a good space, even decks that make you uncomfortable in some way probably have benefit in working with them and kind of working out those uncomfortabilities. Again, go back to my very beginning of working with tarot. I wasn't comfortable with the idea of having the judgment seat of Christ, or having the devil on there, or having the Garden of Eden, a lover's card, or the Hierophant, or those types of highly Christianized ideologies. That made me very uncomfortable. And I said, nope, that's not for me. Now, however many 25, 20 years later, whatever it, might be. Now it's like those concepts I can work with comfortably. I understand them, and I understood them at the time. In all fairness, I just didn't want to go there. I wasn't in the space to go there. And so that changes, right? That shifts and change. So I definitely think that concepts and decks that you may initially push back against might actually end up being something really powerful for you. You just have to decide whether you're in the space to be pushed in that way or not. Um, uh, I can read any deck for myself, but I'm reading for others. I prefer the 3 cards not to. Yeah, I think I missed that conversation. I think they're talking about cards you look at. I definitely have card decks that I don't use for clients that I would use for myself. But again, I don't know that whole conversation there. Oh, Solabuska is really an interesting deck, isn't it? The Morgan Greer deck is the one that I got as a fun 70s Fleetwood Mac kind of deck, and then I ended up loving it. Yeah. For that, the Morgan Greer, I was really surprised at because it is very 70s, and I thought, oh, but it's a really neat deck. You've always said that the suit of swords is your favorite suit. Yes, it is. And it's mine as well. What does that say about us? I think that's, well, I know what it says about me. It says that I work a lot in my head. And so that issues surrounding the mind and the head are very important to me. I am a very strong Libra, and I'm in my head probably too much. And so I need the reminders to not get in my own way. I need the swords because of that. But I also think it says something about somebody that we understand that, again, life isn't all rainbows and puppies and baby kittens and things of that nature. There's a lot of difficulty, and the sword suit to me speaks of learning and growth that comes from light and shadow. And so I think that I think that the sword suit is very powerful in that. Now, of course, that is in all of the suits, right? Remember, I did come out of playing card divination, so the spades, which would be associated with swords, are all difficult energies in the playing card suit. So there is light and shadow in all of the suits, and if we're not reading it that way, we're missing those aspects, right? Look at all the odd cards in all the suits, and there's going to be some degree of shakeup energy there. But there's just something to my soul that really resonates with the swords because of that. And so it is true. I mean, I have a 2 of swords on tattoo. So swords for the win. Terry says, after taking your first class, I found I do not find. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Terry. I love the swords. I love to give the swords some love. That is really fantastic. If that's all you walk away from the class, Miss Terry, I am very happy that you love the swords. Or maybe not love the swords, but you're not afraid of them. That's good. That's a fantastic thing. It makes my soul extremely happy. Dylan asks, what do you think of the extra cards you can get in some decks like Prisma Visions? Most of the times I don't use them, to be honest. I like them. I think of them as that squirrel card. It just it gives you, I do think it gives you sort of a taste of, it gives you a sort of an idea of what, of the sort of overall theme of the artist or the creator of the deck, right? When they have those extra decks, I think that extra deck card says a lot about the intention of the creator for that deck. So I love them, but I don't I would say I don't often put them in. Now, the Found Tarot card is sometimes in and sometimes out. Most of the time, those cards are out. And the reason is that I do read professionally. And so I found it to be problematic if I'm doing, a lot of times people like to take their readings, right? So if they do a reading with me, a tarot reading especially, obviously Oracle would be a whole nother ballgame. But if they get a tarot reading, a lot of times they'll take and set out those same cards that they got and they kind of set it out for themselves so they can sit and look at it and work with it. And so if there's extra cards in the deck, then and they don't have that deck, then that's an energy that they can't sort of replicate themselves on their table. And so I ran into that problem a couple times. And so I ended up, most of the time, I don't put them in. I really like the fountain card. I really like the extra cards. One of the extra cards for sure in the I'm having a mind blank. Don't we love it when our minds blank on us? The Children of Litha tarot. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find it because I want to find it. Let's see if I can find one. Bam! It came right up. This is the Void. I love this card. I don't use it, I don't think, the same way that the guidebook uses it. This is that sort of incubation. There's so much power in this card for me. I really resonate with the image. I resonate with the darkness. For me, darkness is healing. I know lots of people are like, think about like glowing lights around you for healing. For me, it would be the darkness of night, the darkness of it being floating up in space. Like that to me is about healing and quiet and safety and incubation in a powerful way. And so I really love that card. And so I do love that. But like I said, rather than me having to, every time I grab a deck, find the extra cards and pull it out, I just generally don't keep them in the decks because it's not the traditional tarot. So I kind of look at them as like they're mini oracle decks that you get, but again, I like them. I put one in my oracle deck, which is, I'm waiting for the print. It follows the same, you get all of the same symbols as the tokens, but I do have an extra card that's in there. So I do like them because, again, I think they speak to what the intention of the creator was, that bigger overall, that sort of larger scope of their intention. So even though I may not use them in the deck when I'm doing readings, I appreciate them. I did not. Zach asked if I backed the Nameless One deck from the creator. I did not. I will have to see the whole, me. I'll have to see the whole deck. I was waiting. I really want like the Children of, whatever is going to be next that matches the Children of Litha. But from what I understand, those were are symbols, like her own like glyphs and symbols and sigils and things like that. And it just didn't immediately grab me. I kind of wanted to see the whole deck and see somebody that once they got the deck, and just hope that, I don't often, I know we've talked about this before, but I actually don't often back Kickstarters. It's just if something really says, oh my gosh, I have to have that. And that one didn't quite do that until I can see what sort of the whole deck. So the answer is no, I did not. I'm sure I missed things. I'm sorry. It's just when I'm talking, I can't read at the same time. I can see bits and pieces, but I can't really keep the whole essence. Somebody asked what Kickstarter was. I saw that. Susie says, this is a lame question for a Gen Xer who's tech challenged. What is Kickstarter? Kickstarter is that you are correct in that it is a sponsorship. And I think sometimes we forget that, right? Kickstarter is where a person who is creating a deck at different stages, depending on what stages that they're at, they are coming forward and saying, this is the deck that I have a vision for. And in order to fund that, which is because it's, it's expensive, to really get prices decently for good cardstock and all of that, you really need to have, be able to put in a fairly large order to get that price down. So they need to see if they have the backing to be able to do that. And so you're funding their idea for the deck. For the most part, they're not even finished all the time. And so then you are funding it so that when the project does finish, then they'll send you the deck. Sometimes there are exceptions to that where a person has all the artwork done, and so they're just using Kickstarter as a pre-order, right? So the deck is done, here's the cards, you can see them all. Now we're doing a pre-order so that we can put that order in, because most of us don't have the money to be able to put an order in, not knowing how many people are going to be interested in it, but needing a certain amount of decks to get the price down. So sometimes that's the case, but a lot of times on Kickstarter, the deck is in the process of being made. And so you don't necessarily see. So you are supporting a vision of what you think that's going to be. And then when it's all finished, then, you're down the road, then you end up getting the deck. So that is... that's kind of what Kickstarter is, but you are technically sponsoring somebody's vision, and then out of that, your hope is that you get the deck that you paid for. But in terms of Kickstarter, like, they don't really care whether you get the deck or not, because you're sponsoring, right? You're sponsoring the vision there, and so I don't think there's any recourse with Kickstarter if you don't actually end up getting a deck. Which I don't think happens a ton. I mean, it has happened in the past, but I don't think that happens a lot. But I tend to back Kickstarters that they've already, they put out a deck, so they have that backtrack, that record behind them, or they have finished most of the cards so that I can see them all. I just don't generally buy decks that I can't see them all. But there have been exceptions to that rule for sure. If I just oh my goodness, I just love this concept enough to support the concept. Susanna says, in the Darkness of Light Tarot, Four of Swords is difficult for me. It's a total death, or can I read it like a pause? I love the Darkness. Oh my goodness. Kelly's Mojo Water just landed on the floor, and the Way Home Tarot, which is one of my current favorite tarot decks. Kelly has a video on something, I'm not sure what, but let me see if I can find it real quick. Okay, these are all... Apparently, the last time I used my Darkness of Light, I did not shuffle it well. Let me see if I can find it, because I can't picture it in my head at the moment. The Four of Swords for me is not death. If it is, it's something like within the Llewellyn Tarot, where he is going to come back again, right? It's that resting space in which King Arthur is. There's a lore about King Arthur that in the greatest hour and the greatest need, he's going to come back again. So he's just resting. So that concept of the resting knight is very mythologically so you'll often see, like a knight with his sword, and it almost looks like in a coffin, but the idea is of the waiting knight, not knife. The concept is of the waiting knight that's going to come back again when needed, which is a concept I love, just because of King Arthur. So this is why I do not like my decks to be whopper-jawed. Not a fan, not a fan, not a fan. I really messed up that deck. I see, Destin. I know I need to do that. Actually, my daughter and my niece want to do it. If I can get Kelly Bear and you, Dustin, we could do a one shot. Okay, now I think they're upright. Correct. Here we go. Four of Swords. I mean that is a tomb. Yeah. Um, so this is what you're talking about here. So it's definitely a grave there. That person is going to come back again. So you can think of it as a zombie card. um, I am so used to, obviously, there are always going to be, I've not yet had a deck, right, that there wasn't one card that I have to just do my own thing on, right? That's just the nature of, unless I make, sorry, I'm going to sit here and put the rest of it right side up. If there's always a card that I'm going to just have to say, this is how I see that card. And so I don't let the images dictate to me how I read a card. I have a way of reading the cards. I have meanings to the cards that are there, whether there's any pictures on here, if it was just the word of the name on it or not. It doesn't really matter. In the end, all decks are pip decks to me, right? So I have a specific way that I see the cards through elements, through numerology, through whatever my understanding that I've gained about tarot. And so if there's, I look at images and there can be a nuance to using that particular deck. It's like, oh, that's interesting with that nuance that I can pull in, but I can just as easily ignore the image and say, this is a Four of Swords. The number 4 is the number of stability. The swords is the stability of the mind. This is a stable space for the mind. Stop and pause for a minute in this stable space. Richard, I'm sure you've been asked this question, but would you ever give away a deck or decks? Meaning, would I get rid of my decks? Like, I have no problem with used decks. In terms of my own decks, I do give away my own decks. It just tends to be something that I do personally. Like, I resonate with, send it personally to somebody. I have done giveaways on my token set and my own on my Lenormand deck. I think that was over on Instagram when my tokens came out. So I'll do like giveaway like that, usually on Instagram. So I'm not sure what you're if you're talking about. I'm not sure if that answers your question. So I have no problems trading, selling, giving decks away secondhand and or getting decks secondhand. So secondhand decks don't bother me. So yeah. Oh, in terms of giveaway, I don't do tons of giveaways. Nope, but I do try to, like when I get new decks out, I will do giveaways that way. Like I said, I did. The last one I did was for a set of tokens and for my Lenormand deck. But in terms of requests for a free deck, I don't tend to work with that because you end up getting a lot of them, obviously. So I can't afford to do that. Unfortunately, if you open it one way, then it can get a little bit overwhelming. Okay. Do I work with sigils? I do. I don't give me all your decks. Adam's like, sure. Yes, I do work with sigils, but at the same time, mostly they're runic. I use geomancy symbols as sigils, and I also use, bind runes, so combining runes together. Those are the primary ways that I work with what I consider to be sigils and symbols. So I don't very often just randomly make up my own sigils. That's not something that not that I'm against it by any means, but I tend to be use geomancy symbols as sigils. So in workings or on my table or whatever, I'm using geomancy symbols that way. You can draw them out as sigils versus just as dots. And then bind runes or combining different runes together to make a sigil for that. I would use that way. So those are probably the primary ways that I would say that I use sigils. If that's, hopefully that answers your question. I think that's what you mean by sigils. Dylan said, "Did I have a hard time remembering Roman numerals, or did you already knew them?" I already know them. I already knew Roman numerals, so that wasn't a problem for me. Terry, thank you about my tokens. I would love to get the Olympus Tarot secondhand since I've not heard. I don't know the Olympus Tarot. Sorry, I'm trying to. I see oranges here. Okay, so I answered that. Essence says, I once saw Sadhana restructure the Marielle Tarot to fit her. I understand how you can make your cards yours. I think that Miss Veronica did that. I think Miss Veronica Jude, if you look up Veronica Jude on YouTube, I believe she has a video where she goes through and she reorders the Marielle. The Marielle works. I love the Marielle, and the Marielle for me works, as is. So I never felt any need to restructure the Marielle, but I know that I think Miss Veronica, I could be wrong, but I'm 90% sure Miss Veronica did a video about that, and it really kind of opened up. I think she did that, and I know a bunch of people did that afterwards and really had it. It was kind of a new way of working with that particular deck. Again, I really like the structure of the Marielle. It works really well for me. The images to the cards work really well for me personally. And so I never had a pull or the draw to do that. I don't think I've ever done that actually with a deck. Now I have taken certain tarot, I will say, so I've never restructured somebody's tarot deck. Like they've made a tarot deck and I've restructured it. Not that I think there's anything wrong with it. I just never have. But I have taken tarot decks and cut off all of the, just cut everything off but the images and kind of turned it into an oracle deck. I've definitely done that because it just didn't function for me as a tarot deck, but the artwork was actually beautiful. And so turned that into, turn that into something that really worked for me, that where it didn't maybe work as a tarot deck. The point was that it speaks to your point that you read cards how you read them. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, again, they're tools. So make the tool work for you. I don't think, barring being disrespectful. So like if you're taking somebody's deck and defacing it for the purposes of being disrespectful, that to me, I think is problematic. If you don't like a deck, just don't use it. Give it away to somebody who will use it, sell it, put it up on eBay, throw it out, like do whatever you want to do to it. But I think like defacing somebody's hard work is to me just disrespectful, not something that I would do. But taking a tool that you've purchased and working it so that it works for you in some way, I don't personally have any issue with that whatsoever. In the end, we purchased a tool, and however that ends up working for us is, is dandy. So that's kind of how I feel about that. It's like, let's make it work for us because it's a tool for us to get messages, and it should work for us. Okay. Yes. Miss Nikki is reminding. Yeah. Cause we're past time and some people do like to get that card. Okay. So we're working through decks that I'm wanting here. Let's do the Sacred Traveler. We're working through decks that are in my, I just want to check them out. I'm not sure what I feel about them. And so I want to check them out. So let's try this Sacred Traveler. I haven't used this at all. I think Hay House has their at Christmas time. They have their, or did we do one with this? I can't remember. I don't know. Anyways, they have like their $8 deck deals or $5 deck deals like at certain times of the year. And I had picked up, I had picked this deck up but I haven't had the chance. I haven't done a walkthrough. I haven't worked with it personally. And so I put those on the shelf that I want to just give a try with you guys because it's this great chance to try something out. So we're going to try this one out. I don't know anything about it in terms of whether I feel like it's a good reader. And so you guys become my Oracle deck guinea pig. Um, We talk about shuffling poorly. Susie shuffles poorly, apparently. I'm not sure. Sometimes there's sub threads of there are sub threads of conversation going on, because I see bits and pieces of them, but I can't follow them, and so I'm like, okay, I don't know what's happening there. It sounds interesting, but I don't know the context. Richard says, this is the best Saturday for ice cream. And there you go. That is a good day. Ice cream. Wow. I can't say that live chat with me is a good day. That's a bit arrogant. But the ice cream and a chat with a bunch of different people who are interested in the same thing, I would say that's a good day. I know. Nikki's just an amazing hammerer. I just saw something and then I lost it. Oh, I think Nikki was saying something about she watches videos and she can't watch it because they don't interpret it the way they do. I mean, there's a way that you can get a if somebody does something completely different, just is reading in a way that's just completely different, I think there's a way you could be open to that and just kind of saying, okay, this is interesting to see what else somebody is doing with tarot. So I can see where that you could open up to the concept of just kind of watching and getting say, okay, this is just interesting to see how somebody's going to read. But I mean, obviously there's going to be people that just read in a completely different way. It doesn't resonate. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is something wrong with then typing a nasty message on their thing saying you're not reading tarot right or anything like that. That's, my opinion, is not correct. But just clicking off and saying, yeah, that's not for me, that's not a problem. Fable Whist says, are there any Fey decks with no Roman numerals on them? I struggle to read Roman numerals. I mean, I guess I guess I'm guessing, this is me guessing, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm guessing that it would be in the major arcana. Do you have a deck maybe that just has Roman numerals, but then doesn't have the title underneath? Because a lot of decks, like I think of this as a fairy deck. I think of the Children of Litha as a Fey deck. And so while it does have Roman numerals, I think, no. Well, yeah. It does have Roman numerals in the minors too, but there are the number of items are on this deck. So while this is a 7 of wands, there are actually 7 wands on it. And in the major arcana, it has Roman numerals, but it has the title on it. So I feel like that would be pretty easy, even if you weren't comfortable with Roman numerals. So that would be one suggestion. Tarot of the Hidden Realm. I don't think that uses Roman numerals, but it does, but it has the name right next to it. So that has the Roman numerals, but it has the name next to it. So I feel like that would be a problem. And then the minors have it written out. So like the 8 is written out. So that would be, I think, really usable. I'm trying to think. There's not a lot of great, in my opinion, Fey decks out there. What is the Hush Tarot? Let me grab that real quick. So I guess this one would be a little bit more hard. This would be a harder one. So this would be an example. A lot of low scarabeos, this is not low scarabeo, but a lot of times they do this. So here, so we have the cup at the top, and then we have the Roman numeral. So this is a 6 of cups, but there isn't anything in the image that has like 6 cups on it. So I guess this one would be, one that if you don't like working with Roman numerals, this would be, for the pages, it does say the page at the bottom. And then of course, let me find a major card. The majors have the Roman numeral at top, but it does have the title. So, but this one would be problematic in the minors because it doesn't have that. So I would definitely not qualify this necessarily as a beginner deck either, but it's stunning. Stunning. I haven't done a walkthrough of this yet. I wanted to work with it yet to see whether it was just pretty or if it was really workable, and it's quite workable. Very, very good Fae in terms of not good Fae, but a good Fae deck in that it has that uncomfortable liminalness that Fae energy should be. Fae energy is something that is other, and it should have that sense of otherness to it. And yeah, the Stolen Child is on my list. I think that was a Kickstarter too, and I wanted to be able to see all the cards. So that's definitely on my list. I do love Terror of the Hidden Realms. It's one of my all-time favorite decks. So I don't know if that answered your question. I'm sorry. Hidden Realms has no scenery, right? Just Fae. I'm not sure what you mean by no scenery. I'm not sure. There is scenery, but it's very Terror of the Hidden Realms is very close up to the people for the most part. Now the moon, oh my gosh, the moon, right? So there are a couple, but a lot of them are very close up. It's more focused on figures than the scenery, but there is scenery there. So I might be misunderstanding the question. I was just talking, you must have just missed that, or else Dustin, you might be a little behind. Not behind, but I wonder, sometimes people like paused it or something and they come behind. So the chat's behind when the video is because we were just looking at the Hush Tarot. That's cute. I love that. I know people are leaving. I'm so sorry. We are way past. We normally stop at 6 and it's 6:23. So we are, so we're late. I'm going to hurry up and pull these right now. Good night to people who have to leave. All right. I'm going to focus, and I know I'm getting hungry too, Adam, and I still have work to do. So I definitely need to get off. I guess we're just feeling chit-chatty. I didn't even realize how late it was. So I know, I think we're running off on tangents today. So it made it just go longer. Let's try this deck out. Get a message for us, see what we get. I need to do a walkthrough of the Hush Tarot. Like I said, just because Dustin missed it. I wanted to give it an actual try with doing readings with it because I'm pretty sure, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm 90% sure. No, I'm not. I'm highly sure. I'm not maybe as high as 90. I feel like this is pre-existing artwork that was used for a tarot deck. I don't think that he painted all of these images for the purpose of tarot. Nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't work in terms of as a reading deck. And so I really wanted to get a feel for whether or not this felt like, despite that it still felt cohesive and was readable. So far, I've done a few readings for myself, and I do feel like this is readable. I don't know that I would say that it's easy reading. I would not call this a beginner's deck because it doesn't, just follow super closely and easy to do. But I am really loving it. But you know that I love Fae, and I do love, and there's not a lot of decks that capture that otherness of Fae-ness, and I do feel like this does. And so I'm really loving it. So I'm going to do a walkthrough. I just wanted to use it so that I could say in the walkthrough whether or not I felt like it was actually readable or just really beautiful. You can skip my hour-long walkthrough and say, I do think it is readable. I do think that it isn't beginner's level. You have to be willing to just kind of roll with it. But I do think it is it's a readable deck, and it has a very, very Fey. I think some people have even said maybe a dark Fey, but I don't think that it's. I actually don't think that it's dark Fey. I think Fey is just uncomfortable, right? For me, Fey energy is not human energy. It's Fey energy. It's other energy. It is just left to right of center. It's just, in that bend of the woods that isn't quite in our reality. And I don't think that that energy should be really frou-frou and wonderful all the time. There is a darkness to Fae as well as there is darkness to humanity. And so I think that a real Fae deck should have that kind of feel of I'm in an other space here, and it really captures that energy of that really well, I think. So, anyways, as we go off on another tangent, this is the time for squirrel energy, right? Get me talking about face stuff and we'll be here all night long, because there's just not a lot of decks out there, right, that really capture that feel like, okay, I'm entering into that other space. There's not a lot of decks that way. And so I was like skeptically optimistic when I purchased it, because I was like, oh, please tap in. It felt like it would, but is this, is it really going to be readable as a deck, or are these just pretty images? So I really had that that kind of like, oh, I'm not sure, but I've got to give it a try. Okay. We will consider these decks well shuffled. Traveling Lightly, Distant Thunder, and the last card is Rainbow Blessings. This is a very sweet deck, I will say. It feels like you are in a children's storybook. I love this. I love. My thought for this deck was, as I've said before, in Decembers, I tend to get a very sweet, almost childlike, childhood supportive deck, because it's a very rough grieving month for me. And so I tend to do very well with decks that are that sort of beautiful tap into, childhood storybooks kind of feel of supportive energy. And that's what I bought this for. I didn't end up using it that way. It didn't come till later, but I'm sorry. I'm going to get to the reading. I just was kind of backing track a bit because we haven't used this deck before. So it really has that sense of going off on a fairy tale journey. And the one thing that I will say from the looks at it that I've done is I would probably be good with cutting it off right here, except for the backs are just too gorgeous. Because I don't tend to always like the little things at the bottom. But, what are you going to do? I did see that somebody completely trimmed this and it was gorgeous. And that might be what I end up doing because I love the images. It's just very much like you're in a children's fairy tale. So the first card that we have is Traveling Lightly, Simplify Your Life. So this is about streamlining, and I'm all for that. So our message, let's get away from I'm in deck analyzing mode, and I don't need to be in analyzing mode when we need to be in reading mode. It's because we were just talking about the hush there, and I'm in that analytical space. In terms of doing it as a reading, Traveling Lightly, let's simplify. So over the course of this week, it might be important for us to let's streamline some things. Let's clear space. Let's just simplify the mind, simplify our physical space, kind of clean space out a little bit and simplify things. And it goes to this idea of distant thunder. There's rumblings on the horizon, right? I think that's really interesting to think about this idea of distant thunder, that it's far off, it's not there, but there's some rumblings on the horizon. What does lightning do? When lightning strikes, it like puts, it animates the air, it cleanses. After a thunderstorm, what happens is that sense of cleanness, right? That sense of clarity that comes after a thunderstorm. But it's coming in the future. So I like this as a bit of a warning. It says, simplify your space because there's some rumbles on the horizon. Maybe this week there's going to be some difficult things that you're going to have to deal with. Maybe there's going to be a couple thunder showers, some snow showers if you're in my neck of the woods, right? This idea of there could be some little minor thunderstorms. So clean space, clear your space, clear your mind, simplify things so that you're kind of ready to face the challenge that comes ahead. But in the end, and I love this because think about this, you have the distant thunder and the storm that might be coming, but it's going to end with the rainbow blessings, right? So we have this sense here of the rainbow that comes only after the storm. We don't get the rainbow without the storm, or at least without a pretty good rainstorm, right? A really good rainfall. But in a perfectly beautiful sunshiny day, we're not getting random rainbows, right? We need the rain for that. So I really like the way that these are connecting, like simplify and clarify your mind and your space, your plans, all those types of things, streamline things. There's some rumblings on the horizon that's going to clear the air, and then you're going to get to the rainbows and the blessings that you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't have some of those rainstorms that might be coming this week. So I feel like that's a very proactive, like it gives you something to be proactive about in the reading. It gives you a bit of a heads up of some rainstorms, reminds you that the rainstorms, that we need the rainstorms to get the rainbows, but it also gives you something proactive to do, which is to go focus on what's important, streamline your planner. Maybe this is a time to go through your schedule. Do you need to streamline your schedule? Is your house like mine turned from a week of being sickness turned into an absolute clutter mess? Because small spaces do that quickly, and you need to clear your space, get everything cleaned up so that you can move forward with this week, whatever comes up. And in the midst of the rainstorm, remember that the rainbow is coming. So yeah, I think that was workable. That's why we like to try these things out. I feel like that was gives us something to work with. Goodbye. I know people are leaving. Goodbye. We're late. We're overextending. Overextending it. The deck that I was just looking at was the Sacred Traveler Oracle card by Denise Linn. This was recommended to me by quite a few people. The reason I got it is I love this deck so much. And this is by Denise Linn. Now, I still highly prefer the artwork on here is really gorgeous. But I love the structure of this and the use of landscapes and things so much in this that I had to give this a try. For sure. I have another one of hers that I got at the same like $5 sale. That's Nature Spirit, but I haven't tried this at all. I wanted to say, just because we're sitting here, I'm going to leave. I promise. If you got to leave, just leave. I wanted to mention, and I'll talk about this in the walkthrough of the Hush Tarot, but I feel like there is a lot of energy, similar energy between the Hush Tarot and the Magic of You. I did a walkthrough of this. There is that same level of uncomfortable nature. This is not a Fae deck, but this is a Fae deck. It is not, the subject matter is not about Fae, but it feels like Fae energy. It feels like you've entered into the other world. And it has that same degree of, there should be something uncomfortable because you're not in your own environment. And so I feel like these have a similar energy to them. Even though they are not, this doesn't have fairies in it or Fae creatures in it. But the energy between these two decks, to me, on the surface, at least right now as I'm working with this, has a very similar feel to it in a powerful way. So, if we're chatting, I've recently discovered Vedic astrology. Everything is shifted back one sunshine. Yeah, I'm not an astrologer, so I can't speak of it. I mean, I know that that is the case with Vedic astrology, but I don't know anything about it other than that. So there were some people I know who had studied astrology for a long time on earlier, but I don't know if they're still on or not. Essence says, did you check out the Baba Mythical Creatures watercolor edition yet? There is a walkthrough. Oh, I did not know that there was a walkthrough up. I had a couple friends who purchased the uncolored version of it. Now, I'm a big fan of Baba Studios. Some of my favorite decks. I love the Victorian Romantic. My decks are a mess. I've got to clean myself out. I love the Fairy Tale. I love the oh my gosh, I'm totally blanking. I love oh my goodness. I've been sick. I've been so sick for a week. Oh no, this is the wrong one. I feel like this deck is going to hate me. Oh, Bohemian Gothic is one of my favorite decks. Total blank. I'm a big fan, but it almost feels too busy for me. The Mythical Creatures just felt super busy, especially as the line drawings. It just seemed beautiful, but really, really busy. And I often find like really busy line work to not be my favorite in decks. And so, I was really hesitant about it. I didn't pre-order it. But I didn't know that there was a the colored edition, that there was a walkthrough already. So I will definitely look it up, because the concept of it, I was really excited about. When I saw my friend's sepia version, like it was not colored in, it was just line drawings. She felt in using it that it was, again, that had that busy nature to it. Beautiful, but kind of too much maybe. And so then I kind of stopped. Actually, I had two friends that felt the same thing. And so because of that, I haven't yet purchased that. But I'll have to take a look at the color version, because maybe that does shift it and change it. So I will take a look at it and see if I can find those walkthroughs, because I didn't know there was one out there. So thank you for giving me the heads up on that. Okay, I'm going to end this. I know lots of people are leaving, and I know we are way over our time frame, but I enjoyed our time together, whether it was overdue or not. So, okay, I'm going to stop talking, because I think my brain is shutting down, and any sense that I've made up until this point are probably going to go away. So I hope that everybody has a wonderful rest of your weekend. I know that there are other people. I know I'm not the only person who has experienced the flu. There's been a lot of people I've seen on Facebook that have just been down with illnesses and sicknesses. I thought I had food poisoning, but I don't think food poisoning can last for 7 days. And it was a solid 7 days. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But anyways, my point is, I know there's a lot of people. Tis the season for people to have flus and sicknesses and things like that. So for everybody out there who isn't feeling well, take care of yourself. Get the rest if you can. Make some chicken noodle soup. And feel better soon. And the rest of you, try to avoid all of the illnesses out there. Good luck avoiding all of the illnesses, I should say. So I'm not a doctor either, sort of soul, but I feel like there's something going on there. I know people are like, I gotta go eat. That's a long time to chat. I know people don't always approve of long live chats in particular, and this was an extra long one. So I'm going to go get some supper. You guys all do the same, and have a great rest of your night. All right, bye-bye. I'm going to kick everybody off. Thank you again, Miss Nikki, for all your hard work and all your linking. Much. I feel like this was a bit a link heavy chat this time, so I appreciate the extra linking power that you put into things. Goodbye, everyone.